Good evening and welcome to Represent STL, where we build bridges of understanding by artful conversation with all members of our community. I am your moderator for the evening, and my name is Deanna Varner, and I'm the Director of Learning and Community Engagement here at the Repertory Theater of St. Louis. And today we are focusing our conversation on self-care because we all need a little bit of that. But before we start, it is important for us here at the Rep to acknowledge that the land beneath us owes its vitality to generations who have come before us. And in the spirit of making erased and silenced histories visible, we acknowledge that we're standing on the ancestral and occupied lands of many Native tribes that stewarded and cared for this land for centuries. The Illinois, Osage, and Missouri tribes are just a few of the peoples that we pay our respects to. So please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence and displacement and migration and settlement that bring us all here today. Now, grab your favorite beverage or snack, take a deep breath after a long day, and meet our illustrious panel. I want to introduce you all today to Gwen Stewart, Deanna Granger, Dr. Mati Hlatshwayo, Christian Varner, Marian, Wandall, Kelley Bauer, and John Allen. What an amazing group we have assembled here today. We are so excited to be able to be in conversation with you all tonight. So really quickly, we are just going to introduce ourselves. I'm the Director of Learning at the Rep. And I'm looking at Deanna to introduce herself and her work, and we'll just go around so that everybody gets familiar.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Deanna Granger. I'm the attending medical family therapist in SLU Care's Department of Family and Community Medicine. I am also the owner of A First You, which is a comprehensive wellness boutique that offers mental and physical health services. And I'm also doing research around pregnant families and reducing the risk of maternal mortality and morbidity in the African American community. Hello.
Hi, I'm Marian Wandall. I'm a licensed professional counselor and registered play therapist. I work at Revision Christian Counseling as the primary child and family therapist there. Hi.
Hi, I'm John Allen, and I am currently serving as the director of the St. Louis Brentwood Transcendental Meditation Center. I've been a TM teacher, a certified TM teacher for about 50 years, and am currently directing teaching activities for people who want to learn the TM technique or people who have already learned the TM technique in Greater St. Louis.
My name is Kelley Bauer. I'm the owner of Offbeat Yoga in Chesterfield, Missouri. And we also operate workplace wellness programs for different companies around the area, including meditation and yoga.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christian Varner, owner of the health club HHT Fitness in Baltimore, Maryland. Also owner of BAM Juice, which is an organic juice company. And we do sports and performance training, weight loss programs. I'm a former NFL athlete myself, and we host contracts with major universities as University of Maryland and Penn State University.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mati Hlatshwayo Davis, and I'm an infectious diseases physician at Washington University and the John Cochrane VA Medical Center.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gwen Stewart. I'm a psychologist, a drug counselor, and also a meditation instructor. These three things prepare me well to help folks with mind, body, and spirit. I'm also the director and the founder of the St. Louis Wellness Center, where any number of maybe 30 different people work here with us, assisting people with all kinds of different issues related to their mind, their body, and their spirits.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. St. Louis has a lot of gems. And Mr. Varner, I'm understanding that you are a transplant from the East Coast. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's just start with defining self-care, what is it? It seems to be a buzzword. We hear it everywhere we go nowadays. So I'm gonna look to you, Deanna, and also to Marian and Gwen to just kind of start off the conversation. What is self-care?
It's self-care has a lot of different definitions. For me, one of them is it being a love language that we show ourselves. It's the personal attention and time that we give to ourselves. And you're basically courting yourself when you do self-care acts. And when we don't show ourselves self-care, our intimate relationships feel the pressure of feeling that void for attention. But the reality is how can we expect others to show us attention if we don't give that attention to ourselves? So self-care is an important component to us understanding who we are without the confinements of others.
That's good. I love the idea of it being a love language for oneself. That's awesome.
I know.
Very powerful framing.
We have to show ourselves some love. Typically, love languages are we look at it from other people and how we like to be loved. But do we do what we expect others to do to us? Do we do it to ourselves? And so it's important to make sure that we're doing what we expect from others. So
definitely. And Gwen, I see you nodding. You wanted to add to that definition?
I think I like what has been said so far, and I would add that a lot of those ways that we show self-care involve self-care is not just one thing, but it involves physical self-care, emotional self-care, spiritual, financial, on and on and on. So whenever we think about self-care, we really need to know what it is that we are needing or wanting at the time. And I think sometimes there are obstacles to that love language. It might be that we think we're being selfish, but that is not the same as self-care. We could probably talk about that for a long time.
Oh, we're going to get there. Excellent. And anybody else want to add before I jump in?
Yeah, I don't really think that like self-care is an accurate term really, because people like kind of think of self-care as bubble baths and mani-pedis. And it's really not something that is external of you. It can be something that's very internal. And it, like Gwen said, it's part of that wellness wheel of that mind, body, spirit, heart, and so many different other areas of our lives.
That's important. Thank you so much, Kelley, for that distinction. Dr. Maddie, can we talk about the past 12 months in our world? And in relation to this idea of self-care, can we really just focus in on what the conditions have been, and why it seems like it's so important for us now, if never before, to really focus on our own wellness? Let's just talk about all that's been happening in our world with the pandemic and some of the other issues and how it's affecting us and why we need to turn inward.
I mean, it's been harrowing. It's been traumatic. And when you talk about trauma, we talk about acute, very much in the now trauma, but also chronic trauma. So everyone on this call, everyone watching this has been exposed to that. We started this journey with this pandemic, which, to be clear, is unprecedented. We haven't seen anything of this magnitude in over 100 years. And to be in that place, and then for us as a way to survive in a very literal sense, to be required to isolate, which goes against everything that that is required of our wellness, has been, like I said, harrowing. It has been devastating. And I think what's disappointing for those of us in the medical and public health arena is that we have seen countries that, through effective leadership, through consistent messaging, have been able to get to some sense of at least partial, if not full normalcy. And in this country, that hasn't been the case. And that has impacted us as individuals. It's impacted our communities. It's impacted our children. There's this big focus on families and how hard this has been on kids, but I have been extraordinarily concerned about folks who are single and who have been, isolating and sheltering in place and have been alone and void of that human connection. And so whether or not it's a place of comfort to own how this has impacted us, it would be disingenuous for us to assume that every single one of us has not been impacted in some way. And so this conversation is pivotal, but for a lot of us, especially when you bring into it cultural context. Now, I'm born and raised in Zimbabwe and Southern Africa. My intersectionality is a woman, a Black woman, and then a Black immigrant woman. And with that, we have to also be honest about how we interpret and how we're able to accept self-care and what that entails. And that's not the same for everyone. Neither does that look the same for everyone. We had 3 different experts on this call who beautifully and very eloquently, but very differently even defined what this may look like. So we have to understand that how that's accepted changes too. So we have seen, at least when I deal with patients, both in the hospital and in the clinic setting, I have seen that this has had a very significant effect on folks, and we will be seeing that effect for quite some time, I believe.
Thanks, Dr. Mati. It is, I believe you're right, and want to just continue down that path for a moment. What have you all been observing in your field? Some of you are therapists and counselors, doctors, trainers. What are some of the patterns, some of the trends that you have been observing over the past few months?
What I have found with people who come to learn transcendental meditation is that there's a whole gamut, just even within that sort of self-selecting subset of people. Some people are very tuned in to how they're doing and feeling, as Dr. Mati alluded to, and others are really not listening to their inner dialogue because of so much stress and anxiety that they're feeling. They know they don't feel good, but it's very hard for people to put a finger on what it is they need or what it is they're lacking. And it really, and I'm sure that this is probably something everybody on this panel sees. There's a whole range of responses, very much individualized, depending on how people are experiencing the pandemic. The one thing I think all of us can probably say with near certainty is that what's acknowledged now, but certainly wasn't acknowledged at the beginning of the pandemic last spring, is that society is experiencing not just this disease crisis, but an epidemic of stress of proportions at a societal level that we've probably never seen in this country. And it's something we all need to attend to.
Yeah, I think stress is one of those things that of course, we all have stress, and some amount of stress is actually good. It motivates us, it gets us going on projects that we want to procrastinate. But as a society, we have now stepped over the level where the stress is good. And I think we're all experiencing a great deal more stress. And for most of the people that we see in our offices, maybe several of us on the panel, people were already under stress. People were already traumatized. People were already in a great deal of suffering. And now that we've had the past year, that on a scale of 1 to 10, if people were already at a 9, now they're at about a 12 or a 13 or a 14. So the coping that was in place previously is no longer working. And for a number of people, it's really become completely overwhelming to the point where things are just melting down all around them.
And normally we have things to distract us from the realities of life, but this past year has had us looking at the same walls. And I love my house and the same people. And I love my husband and my kids. I swear I do. But it becomes overwhelming at times. And then we add the racially motivated violence against Black people, the disparities of COVID, that COVID has basically highlighted, made the media highlight, but it has been long standing within our country. That adds even more to it as well. And so what jeopardizes people being able to make time for self-care or making it a priority is because they're being asked to show up for business as usual on top of all these other things that are going on. And so the workplace sends a memo that says, make sure you're taking care of yourself during this time. And it's followed by 5 more memos about a meeting, a deadline, more meetings, a new project. Yeah. So people don't feel like they have time for self-care. They're just trying to make it through the day.
And just to add on what was already said, I feel like it was more like a reflective moment, like you said, just an inward journey. This forced you to really look at yourself, your lifestyle, what you were doing, and was all of it necessary. And I think all of us could look back, and through this period, we've learned that we were in a rat race and did a lot of things that wasn't necessarily needed. So we really had to reflect and say, am I wasting time doing things on it was a reflective moment to review what is your life consisting of daily, and then what can I subtract and what can I add for my own self-care, for my health, like we just discussed earlier.
Right.
And a lot of us,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that a lot of us have a hard time visualizing actually like our future, because there's so much uncertainty, and just with everything going on, financially, health-wise, family uncertainty, political uncertainty, and that we get trapped in these like what if cycles. And I think that when we constantly are preparing ourselves for these bad events and potential outcomes, we trigger that flight or fight state. And when we're chronically in that flight or fight state, it can have serious health implications.
I think also, like, one of the things when you're working with kids is you really focus on structure. Structure helps kiddos feel safe. And when everything is just fallen apart, we lost all the structure that we became attuned to and used to. And now it doesn't feel normal. It feels chaotic, and then creates just this uncertainty, like a lot of the people on this panel have been saying.
Yeah, Marian, let's talk about it. A few of us have talked about our children, and I'm a mom as well. I've been doing the virtual learning now for almost 12 months, and it is a challenge to be a full-time employee and a full-time mom and a chef and everything else that is coming with the children being home. How are families uniquely affected? What are families struggling with right now, and how are parents managing?
It's funny because as you asked that question, my thought is like, where haven't families been affected in this process? Because families have been affected in this process in pretty much every single way that you can think of. And as I said, like, structure is the first leg in attachment and security. Without it, our kids don't feel safe. And so now it's like this ongoing thing where, as a parent, I'm feeling this adrenaline, I'm feeling this chaos, and I'm now also supposed to remain somewhat calm and put together for my children so they don't feel it as badly. And then that just creates like just maybe lack of self-care for parents in that way, where it's like I'm trying to keep it together and keep it like some kind of normalcy. But let's just be honest, there is no normalcy right now. Like, parents should not be having to be full-time, worker on top of being a teacher, on top of being a parent. Like, it's just too much. It's too much stress on many people. A lot of my clients have had to make life-changing decisions and how to manage it. And so it makes it's a huge dynamic that it's really difficult for a lot of my parents right now. Just feeling like, I think they feel a lot of shame, a lot of guilt on top of everything else, because it's like, well, I have to do all of it. And so because I have to do all of it, I'm not doing any of it well. And so it's like that, like, I'm feeling set up for failure in this process, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Gwen, go ahead, Deanna.
And I think a lot of parents at this point are probably on autopilot. Parents have had to rethink their structure of consequences with their children. And I mean, children had to rethink their manipulation strategies that they normally use on their parents. Let's be real, because everybody's woke right now. Parents are woke, kids are woke. And the goal for most parents is probably just surviving the day because most adults are working from home. So, and I'm sure that a lot of parents have a whole new respect for teachers, especially for those who are teaching their babies. So.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I see that.
I will say that I send my children's teachers gifts more than I have ever done in the past. I was never the type of mom that's like, let's think of your teacher for the holiday. Now, that's the first thing that we do is we make sure we think of the teachers, because it has truly, truly been a challenge. And you're right. I think we all are certainly appreciating our support systems and our networks in our community more than we maybe have ever in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Gwen, I'm curious to hear what you've been experiencing, especially when it comes to younger people as well.
I was thinking, actually, can I say something else before answering that question?
Of course.
I think you brought up a really good point that can really highlight self-care, which is the generosity that you feel towards your children's teachers. It makes us feel good. And so I know that in my own neighborhood now, I walk around a lot more and I talk to my neighbors. And this year at the end of the season, I left gifts on some of the steps when I hadn't done that before. And there's this sense of, I think, community and also genuine, authentic feelings that we're having now, because as someone else mentioned, we've been able to distract and entertain ourselves forever. And now that all of that is stripped away, we're really coming to kind of a preciousness about our humanity, where we can connect and meet people and be kind and be generous. We help people at the grocery store when we might not have done that before. I see in my neighborhood app that there are people saying, hey, if anybody's sick, I can go to the grocery for you, or I can bring you masks. Although that's not really what we would consider self-care, it absolutely helps ourselves. So I want to highlight that it's this interesting cycle of when we help others, we also help ourselves. And I don't want to let that get lost.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. For all of the parents and family members who are raising children, rearing children, I'm just curious, and this may be a little selfish, but what are things that we should be looking out for in our children to make sure that they are healthy and well? And what things specifically do we do to restore their joy and to give them that sense of normalcy?
I think like the first thing that I've noticed for when I get starting concerned about like my own clients and so forth is like when we start to become really complacent and kind of just like, this is just the way it is. Like, and the reason for that is because then, it's like, okay, now we're starting to go down a road that could be a little scary. But I think the first step is like engagement. Like, how can we engage our children? And I work with little itty bitties. I work with like 4, 5, 6-year-olds. So when I'm working with them, it's like, it's always engagement. It's like fun, play. And again, with that, you're releasing endorphins and like positive chemicals in your brain that you need just by simply giving your child a hug. And I know that might seem really simple, but just even the small, simple acts of engagement can really do a long-lasting impact. So for example, my toddler today was like throwing a temper tantrum. And I know if I'm like, let me hold your hand. And so as I held his hand, I stroked his hand like this and then tapped it or squeezed it and then tapped it and squeezed it. And what that did was that helped his brain soothe itself. The rhythm, the touch, that made his brain calm down and come down. And so how do we as parents engage our children in a way that we're capable of and what they actually need? We don't have to do an extravagant thing to do to engage our children. It can be something very simple, but anything that could help get them a little bit out of their heads and out of the 4 walls and experience some kind of just precious moment with other people, that's the most important. So.
That engagement piece is so key. And the adverse is true too. And I wonder about how to do the same thing for folks who are in the house alone. Dr. Mapty lifted up that, at least we have the benefit of a partner or a children that are in our homes. But what about those who are single What about those who live alone? How do they still have that same sense of engagement and connection? Any ideas or things that you all are sharing with your clients or your patrons?
Communication, I think, is key during this time. A lot of people tend to utilize, self-isolation as a defense mechanism that will bury them even deeper into the loneliness. So I think communication is key, but I do think the one thing this pandemic has taught us is how to commune with nature better. And something as simple as getting outside, walking. Winter is, I'm from a sub-Saharan country. I don't do winter. My husband and I have an arrangement where snow time is between him and his children, and I will see them at a later time. But even I, with all of my, scrooginess about winter, after a long day, after a difficult day at the hospital, just breathing in fresh air, whether it's for seconds, a minute, walking, giving yourself some time to commune in that way, I think goes a long way. But I do think, as much as we're all Zoom tired, trying to be creative and even changing platforms. I mean, honestly, as much as Zoom and we're done. Like I no longer, I want to be in a never ever to be seen again relationship. And so sometimes it's just nice to hop on a WebEx and be like, oh, hey, look, house party looks a little different, a phone call. Someone sent me a handwritten letter and I sobbed. I hadn't seen writing in such a long time on, a care package. These little acts of gratitude, I think, as Gwen was pointing out, but of service, acts of service, but also just create, changing up and having some innovation around it, I do think goes a long way. But one thing that I think was big for me was, nature and really sort of recommuning with that and how therapeutic that was.
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me of at our yoga studio, we connected our members via like a little pen pal program, and they sent each other little cards in the mail, just because you never get mail anymore. Like you said, it's so special when you do get it. And so sending somebody like a fun note card or something, or a postcard or whatever, it just makes someone's day, and it makes your day just for giving back to someone, like you said.
Yeah, and to piggyback on what everyone else said, find a group, a positive group like we're in now. Like for myself, all of my clients in Maryland, we developed an app during the pandemic where we work out online together. And my trainers, they do personal training, but we stopped doing the large groups. And a lot of the people who work out at our gym are single people and have children, but we still engage in community, collective, active fitness together, and we pray after every session together. We have book clubs. We do a lot of social engagement with one another. And one thing I always do is I send people things that they may lack in their exercise via Amazon without them asking, like you said, care packages, and they see like a gift, like, oh, I got dumbbells now. And engaging in a group, community love, and seeing people's faces and smiling and getting back to the basics.
Yeah. I think when you said getting back to the basics, that's one of the things I've probably said a gazillion times in the past year, and half of those were to myself. And that basic list for me involves things like get up and go to bed at around the same time, do take a shower every day, do put on actual clothes, don't wear pajamas, eat good food, go outside.
When you're looking good, so it's working. You look real good.
Well, it also keeps us sane, right? And
That's right.
Physical activity, be in the sunlight, all those.
That's right.
We know they help us, and they also help our kids. And I think in the beginning, we all thought we were on vacation. And so we kind of threw caution to the wind, and we overindulged in everything. And I mean, COVID-20 is not a myth. It's a real thing. We all ate like we didn't have to worry. If we get back into some structure and do some of the basics, I think it really does keep us in line in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to shout out one sector of the population that we're seeing a lot more of. Is I was pregnant during the pandemic, so I had a little pandemic baby, which really fun to be an infectious disease doctor who's also pregnant. But we're here. She's beautiful. She's healthy. But one thing that became unhealthy about being pregnant and being and having another life to consider in such a precious state is fear. And for many people, this pandemic and the length of time that it's dragged on will bring out so much fear. And I think that manifests in different ways. So, I selfishly sort of put that out there to throw it then back out to the rest of you who are experts in this, about how fear drives this difficult, and continuing, as I spoke to earlier, trauma, as it were, that people are facing. But for me, I'm blessed to have an incredible partner and incredible family that I think brought me out. But that fear would make me fixate on this one thing, and we have a 4-year-old on top of that. But having to be intentional about personal connection. I think one of you were talking about really connecting with the kids and making sure they have their individual time and being thoughtful about how our behaviors impact them. But I really do think fear is something that I see so much of in the hospital and my clinic visit, and for folks who are dealing with other things, for folks who are home alone and have pre-existing conditions. For those of us who come from communities of color, we were in a pandemic and we were also seeing images of people that look like us being murdered in broad daylight, and the trauma that comes with that and the fear that grips you, and then to lose community. And so I think it's a very important thing to talk about and to be aware of, because you just never know what another person is dealing with. But I think that fear can be such a barrier.
I think it's so important, Dr. Mati, that you named that. I think that so much anxiety and so much concern will physically show up in our bodies. And it's important to be able, sometimes people really don't know what's operating, but to be able to name that I am afraid, I am concerned, I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. That is incredibly important to really pull at the root of one's anxiety. I'm curious to hear, especially those of you who are therapists, how much anxiety are you seeing, and how are you helping to soothe those concerns?
Well, we're doing research around, I do some research around pregnant moms, families in the African American community. And before the pandemic, that was an alarming rate of moms, African American moms in particular, not surviving. And so the mortality and morbidity rate in the African American community before the pandemic was really high, on top of now we're in a pandemic. And so now I need to survive delivering my baby on top of people like me who are dying, who the survival rate for African Americans is very low. And so we're not surviving. And so we have that on top of the added violence that we see all the time. And so the media is highlighting it, but it's always been there. We've always experienced it as well. And so then on top of being just a Black woman.
Period.
That's it. It's enough said. And so there's a lot that my Black moms have been experiencing while pregnant as well. And I don't think that we've given them the support on top of them attending appointments alone, because you can't come with someone. So someone has to sit and wait for you outside on the parking lot. Your partner can't come in with you. And so you don't have that support to help you feel comforting and supported in that moment, because there is a historical piece when it comes to healthcare and Black people and trust. And so and we have to say it, we have to name it. As well, to let it be known that this is something everybody experiences different, right? And so there isn't a general thing that everyone is going through either. And so we need to make sure that we highlight every area of experiences that people could actually be going through. But when it comes to those feelings, those not so good feelings, sometimes we want to ignore those emotions, right? We want to ignore those emotions, and we want to just keep moving. But sometimes we got to stop, we have to reflect, and we have to give ourselves, we have to allow ourselves to feel those emotions and then begin the process of healing and then moving on. Because when we try to take that microwave approach to our emotions and mental well-being, it doesn't work. It's a process. And so my clients, with my clients and patients, we talk about controlling. We talk about controlling our emotions and not allowing our emotions to control us. But in doing that, you have to allow yourself to feel them. And so it's okay to cry, but it's not okay to deny that you need to cry, because it's going to come out one way or another. And so it could be something festering inside of you that could be creating a cancer because you're not allowing yourself to feel those certain emotions. And so we talk about the effects of that when we don't allow ourselves to feel certain things. But I always highlight a cultural perspective too. I understand what that looks like from a cultural perspective if you do allow yourself to actually feel emotions, and how that can be presumed as being weak. I mean, not having strength, or maybe you are that backbone in your family. And if you were to break down and allow yourself to feel, you don't know what it could look like for you and your family the next day. And so I think as a therapist, highlighting the cultural perspective as well, and not just giving them just general advice because it's the right thing to do. It's their reality. There are some other factors that we have to take into consideration.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
I wish I'd known you in May.
You know me now. We know each other now. It's never too late.
But I'm not having a third baby, so we don't know each other. Let me tell you what we're not going to do is we're going to keep pushing with these two. But you know, I really, my story was so mirrored in what you said, because I found myself not only in the midst of a pandemic, but being charged with leading the fight. And then found myself in Black Maternal Fetal Health Week in May, you know, weeks away from having my baby, with statistics about how Black women were dying disproportionately to white women. And even though I have no pre-existing conditions, a real fear that I wouldn't make it out the hospital, already being in a pandemic where I couldn't have my mom, which in my culture is a must. In my culture, your mother is there to prepare you in the weeks leading up and to be there with you physically, and didn't have that afterwards, you know. And you know, when women have had children, you know, their healing is different. And then 2 weeks after that, George Floyd. And so, you know, when you talked about then being just expected to show up, right? You get, just like you said, you get the emails and people just don't understand the levels of traumas that are happening in different communities. I really, really, really want to commend the rep, just looking at this panel, at diversity that is here, and talking about culture, and talking about the fact that this is not a one size fits all as well. And in understanding that in our own lives, I think is important, because oftentimes people who come from different ethnic, gender, you know, cultural backgrounds have been fed the same sort of coping mechanisms that aren't applicable to their lives. And so it's very refreshing to be here and to hear that spoken about and represented and welcomed. It's very, very refreshing.
Absolutely. Yes, it is. It is. Y'all are touching on so many good points. I want to talk about nature. I've heard take a walk. I've heard take a deep breath. I've heard go outside. I am not huge on cold weather either, but I need to go outside. I need to take a run. Let's talk a little bit about, we've been focusing a little bit on the science of mental and emotional wellness, but let's talk about that physical piece and connecting us, not necessarily with a gym, right? But how do we still take care of ourselves in a natural perspective when we think about nature? I see some heads nodding. Who wants to jump in on that?
Well, sure. I don't want to keep going to fitness, but of course, going outside, running, fresh air in the lungs. I mean, we the elephant in the room is we're dealing with a virus, a pandemic, and your lungs are susceptible. So if you get outside, you run, you get in the sun, take deep breaths of fresh air, like all of that's healthy, enjoying nature in that way, and with your family and that's quality time with the children, and that's also achievement awards. We got to work out in today, yay kids.
Because their gym class is definitely not doing the job. But I'm curious about those of us who do have pre-existing conditions, right? Like those of us who cannot go and take a jog, those of us who are not able, maybe our knees or our back or some other condition is requiring us to actually take it easy and to stay inside. What do we suggest to those members of our population that are really the most vulnerable?
The thing that I've noticed online, outside of the particular context of my teaching transcendental meditation to people, is that there is now a wealth of resources available for just the kind of people you're identifying, but they may not know that they exist.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot tell you how many times I have noticed in just the last couple months, people, rather websites talking about indoor routines where people can get an aerobic workout even if they can't get outside, or a low impact workout even if they have joint issues and that sort of thing. Or just they hate the winter so much they can't bring themselves to step outside the front door. Now, we all know that's not ideal, but there are people like that. But resources exist for these people, and sometimes it just takes someone else in that person's circle, family, friends, whatever, to point out to them, acknowledge their difficulty or limitation, but say don't use as an excuse. You know, talk to your doctor, talk to your friend who is a fitness buff, and ask them what they know. And people have to sometimes, and it's not always easy, and I can say this from personal experience, it's not always easy, but people need to be willing to reach outside themselves, especially if they're living alone, and ask for help. And sometimes because of particular personality issues, that's hard to do, whatever, but it also is incumbent upon those of us who care about others to look for people like that and reach out to them. Mm-hmm. I am hopeful about one thing above all else on a social level from the last year's experience, which is that those of us who are predisposed to help others, who are predisposed to be of service to others, now have the perfect excuse to reach out to people who are alone, who are living in maybe potentially isolating situations, and just make contact. Just call to say hello and ask what you need. I happen to have a friend who doesn't drive, doesn't live far from her grocery, but also is a little bit infirm, getting up there in years. And around the holidays, I just make it a point, and this is not just, puffing myself up or patting myself on the back. This is something all of us can do. I just happen to know about this one woman. And I call her and say, do you need anything from the grocery? There's a snowstorm coming tomorrow. I can make a run for you. And it's a small thing. It doesn't make me feel great about myself, like, oh, aren't I wonderful? It just makes me feel like I can do something for somebody else. That's my good fortune. And we all need to remind ourselves, I believe, even while we also need to be able to speak out and ask for help, we all need to be able to remind ourselves that we can still help other people, even if we ourselves need help. For all the ethnic and social and age and religious differences and, God forbid, political differences that exist, we're still one country with a ton of diversity, and we can reach across boundaries that exist. And in my experience, people are touched when that happens to them, especially when they don't expect it, especially when they feel alone. And it encourages those same people to do the same for others that they know.
One of the common threads that I'm finding in this conversation is that self-care is taking care.
Yes.
It's not just about thinking about how you administer, I can't remember who said it earlier, a bubble bath. It's not a bubble bath. It really is being well within so that you can still give externally. I think that is so powerful and really important for us to really highlight. But
I think that I just want to add one thing to that, which is, in my experience, even on days when I might not feel perfect, I find that if I do something for somebody else, I feel a whole lot better. not because of, anything in my mood. It just makes me feel better.
Mm.
And it connects me to other people.
Yeah.
We talk about in the yoga practice is what you were, kind of saying is like, you have enough in your cup to give back to somebody else. And we just talk about that a lot, is like, you're on your mat, and yes, this is an hour or 30 minutes or whatever time you want to spend on your mat. And it's time for just set aside for you, so that not so that you can just, keep that energy inside. It's so that you can give that energy to somebody else and be a light for somebody else.
It's not being selfish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People need to understand that about self-care as well. And it's one of the things that when someone comes to learn the transcendental meditation technique, we don't preach to them about that, but we raise the point, and then when they learn this meditation technique, they learn for themselves. You get rid of some of your stress, some of your anxiety, you're automatically enabled to be more to other people who need you. And even those of us who might live alone in our society, virtually no one is so alone that there isn't someone who needs to hear from them, who needs to have them reach out. And when we free ourselves to whatever extent possible from our fear, from our stress, from our anxiety, we just start seeing more opportunities to reach out and help others. That there's not really, we're talking about self-care. That's our theme tonight, and it's a wonderful and important theme. But I think we sell that wonderful theme short if we think somehow that it's something discrete and divorced from caring for others as well. That every person who's commented has at least indirectly highlighted this point, that caring for ourselves is just part of the larger picture of being a caring, open, non-isolated individual. And to the extent we can actualize that, it helps all of us.
This is not the segment in the conversation, but it is, I think, the right time to lift this question. And it is a question from our audience, actually. Don't get ideas, viewers. There is an actual designated segment for those questions. However, I believe the time is right. And it says, when you keep reaching out to help others through their own challenges, filling their cups, Kelley, you specifically talked about your cup being full, filling their cups back up, as it were. How do you keep replenishing your own cups with everything going on? How do we replenish our own cup? And this can be practical advice. It could be that bubble bath. I'll be honest, for me, it is that bubble bath. But I mean, if it really is some deep soul work, if it is healing, whatever it is, how do we replenish that cup so that we can continue to pour into other folks?
I think what it's hard to give ourselves attention because we get so much out of, and a lot of people have already said it on the panel, that we get a lot out of doing things for others, and then it's hard because we're conditioned to put ourselves on the back burner, right? And then society praises those who show selfless acts. You don't hear about anybody receiving a Nobel self-care prize, right? So we do what is necessary to make it through the day of being mom, dad, employee, boss, caregiver, volunteer. And then by the time we take off that cake, we have nothing for ourselves. And so we have to first learn how to give ourselves attention and then add in what it is to give to other people. And so that's what But First You is all about as well. But first you, and then you can handle everything else with other people. And so we're not balancing it very well. And sometimes when we try to do it at the same time, we tend to give more attention to the people around us because we care, right? Mm-hmm. We do actually care. And so I think starting with yourself first instead of trying to fill others' cup, you have to remember that your cup is filled. But then once it's empty, then what do? If you're not doing anything to make sure that you're keeping it full and taking time and being able to say no when it's time to say no, being able to not answer that phone every time someone calls you, So because they know that you're going to show up, they call you because you answer. They know that you're going to be there. And so people treat you based upon how you treat yourselves. And so if you're not showing that you are, that you care about your personal time, then others are not going to care about that either. They're going to always call on you as well too. But I think one of the ways to show self-care practices is modeling it.
Absolutely right.
I think like another part,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think another part is like being aware of your warning signs of when you're getting to that place of burnout, right? Because a lot of times, like we go until we hit the wall and we're like, how did we get here? Right. And so like, what is it? Like, I know personally, it's like when my body starts to get really tense or when I start to have a lot of negative self-talk, I'm like, okay, these are my warning signs. These are my warning bells of, okay, I need to start finding some ways to get some self-care in, because if we are only going until we hit that wall, we're not there. It's not a healthy lifestyle for us, and therefore we won't be helping other people along the way.
Everyone's familiar with the cliched warning or advice, instruction given to parents of small children on an airplane. If the plane loses oxygen, put the mask on yourself first.
Exactly. We
can't somehow develop some false Superman, Superwoman psychology where we think, no, I don't need it, everyone else needs me, or I've got too many people to help, I haven't got time for myself. That's a false choice. It's a false dichotomy, and it's a path to burnout.
Well, I want to say, first of all, that my new goal in life will be to get the Nobel Prize for self-care. So watch this space.
We'll be watching for you.
It will happen because why not? But also, second of all, I think one of the things that I had to learn that's been really difficult is how to say no. And it's not just in my professional life, but even in my personal life. Because my story as to how I've become very vocal on a national and now international level about COVID in marginalized populations, specifically in Black and white communities, is because of some of the things I've shared about with you earlier. And that's brought with it these wonderful opportunities to, speak and do things and be a part of really awesome opportunities. But there's only 24 hours in a day. And what had become pile-on for me was not knowing when to say no. And I think a beautiful part of that, because saying no can feel so negative, but learning how to say no in the positive and in the affirmative has been really incredible and not as scary as I thought. And even doing so in the home, with the kids, with the partner, making sure that my husband has healthy spaces, that I have healthy spaces, that we provide healthy spaces for the kids, but that balance exists. My husband and I, when we met, we said the one thing we had in common that would be the end of our marriage if we allowed it to is we both tend to be martyrs for our relationships. He would martyr himself for his partners. I tend to martyr myself for my partners. And a resentment that builds up over time and a toxicity that builds up is not worth what you think you're doing, which is you think you're giving, you think you're doing this good thing, but it can be unhealthy. So as much as I think it's important that we've talked about acts of service and generosity, I do think it's important to understand, someone else talked about your limits and your what your triggers are earlier, and also learning when to say no and how to say no in a way that preserves your relationships, but preserves your sanity too, and your overall health.
And what a great way to model to our children how to do it, right? Mm-hmm. When we say no, we're teaching our children that it is okay to take care of yourself and say no, mm-hmm. which is just a beautiful opportunity to teach our children how to do self-care themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one thing people typically don't consider when it comes to self-care or physical health in general is getting rest. And so you can work out, you can eat healthy, but if you're not getting enough sleep, it can be hard to see positive results physically. And so the effects of sleep deprivation on your body can be deadly and definitely can lower your quality of life. So that whole hashtag, team no sleep, or I can sleep when I'm dead. is not a health, hustle, and grind mentality. And so I say, get your sleep and then wake up tomorrow rested and ready.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What many people don't realize about sleep deprivation, which is absolutely not my field of expertise, but which I've read about more recently, is that low-level sleep deprivation, just shorting yourself a little bit over an extended period of time, can be as damaging as missing a whole night because of a crisis. And I think a lot of people can have a tendency to forget that reality and think, well, it's, just I'm up just an extra hour here or an extra hour here, and it takes its toll. And the point you just raised absolutely plays into that.
Whew, y'all lured me here thinking I was going to be an expert, child. I'm in therapy. I feel like I am judged. I feel like you all have cameras in my house this evening. What did you just say? Let me just click to that. He said low-level sleep deprivation is just
Yes.
I said, oop, he got me.
Yes. I was sitting here saying the same thing. I'm like, oh my goodness,
I was
relationship advice and
Did y'all call my
everything
husband? Did my husband call you? Is that what happened? Okay. This was a plan. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Your husband paid me to get on and say,
I see. You are not slick. I have called you. You are the one. I'm telling you. My husband called you for sure. For sure.
One of my mentors, a gentleman who was very important to me spiritually, said that self-care, the idea, the concept, this new wave of self-care is not new at all.
that's right.
But what's interesting is that most of us have the head knowledge. We know we need it. The head knowledge has not translated to our heart. We haven't really begun the work of truly understanding how deeply our existence depends on us to be able to take care of ourselves first. That's why when I first was introduced to Deanna and saw the comma in her business name, I just want you to talk about that a little bit, Deanna, just so people can understand really what that means. And you've been talking about it all evening, but really drew me and resonated with me was that comma, something about that comma in her business name. Can we flash the name of Deanna's business really quickly while she talks to us?
Yes. So, I'm going to say this. I'm going to call my aunt out because she had a problem with the name of my business when I first started. She was like, I'm not feeling it. And I was like, well, it's not for you to feel. It's for me to feel, right? So, and so now she gets it. But it's before you do anything, you have to take care of yourself. And it took a lot for me to be able to actually do that because I'm a mom of two. And they're my world, and a lot of sensors around them. A lot of decisions that I make is around them, and I do put myself. I'm doing better at it, but I have put myself on the back burner a lot to make sure that that they're okay. But I think I did it too much at times, too much to where I was exhausted and I wasn't caring for myself. And then my husband brought that to my attention. He's like, you do so much for the kids, you don't do anything for yourself. And I'm like, well, do you love the kids? Because do you do anything for them? He's a great dad, but he was better at letting go and not being a helicopter parent than I am. So, but that's where it generated from. It generated from my personal experiences of me not doing that and me needing to have a daily reminder of me first before doing anything for anyone else.
That's
so
good, Deanna. That's
and I'll
critical.
just challenge us to say, and I'm saying this from experience. I know all of the signals. I know a lot of the tools, and I found myself still not doing some of the things that we've talked about on this call that needed to be done, and found myself going in deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole. And what that signaled for me was less about needing to know about self-care, is when you intentionally don't engage in self-care, there's an issue with self-love. Yes. And I really think that needs to be addressed at its core. This conversation is not happening because we somehow have, I don't think any of the listeners here, everything that we've talked about is new, right? I think, in listening to y'all, I have been blessed because haven't heard it that way. I've needed this, and they are definitely unique things. But for many of us, a lot of these are things we know. So if you find yourself continually not addressing that, I think there's an issue with self-love. And I think that's a very real issue in times of chronic stress too.
Speak to that. Yes, ma'am.
100% in agreement with that. One other point I wanted to make that, again, everyone may be familiar with, which is that the human nervous system, again, not a doctor, not a physiologist, but I see this in the TM teaching that I do. The human nervous system is almost infinitely adaptable. It's highly flexible. It can get stretched to very great limits, not that they're necessarily healthy. And we can have a tendency to just start accepting a stressed out, sleep deprived, overstressed state of life as the new normal. But, as Dr. Maddie just mentioned, then there's a self-love issue there if we start to be okay with that. And we need to, as numerous individuals have said, we need to be aware of what the limits are and pull back from them. Mm-hmm. We need to allow ourselves a chance to heal from an overextended state of life. Mm-hmm. One of the things that TM practitioners, when they first learn this technique that allows the mind and body to rest very profoundly, for stress hormones to decrease even more deeply than they do during a night's sleep and so on, one of the things that TM practitioners often find is they suddenly are more tuned into what's going on in their body and realize, oh, I have not been getting enough sleep at night, or I have been allowing this toxic situation to go on too long. And it's not that I, as a TM teacher, am teaching them some philosophy of how they should live. I just tell them, meditate in the morning before breakfast and before dinner for 20 minutes, and that's it. Go live your life. But they get more tuned in as they start to get rid of excess fatigue and stress. And whether people do it through fitness or yoga or some other means, as people get more tuned into what's going on, they begin to be more aware of ways that they have allowed this, again, low-level self-abuse to continue. Mm-hmm. And with that, there is hope for anyone. We don't have to accept what's going on as the way it has to be. Everyone here, almost without exception, has highlighted this point that we are all still free agents. We are indeed living in a time of toxic stress in society, but there's always something we can do. And in fact, as all the panelists have illustrated, in my opinion, there's not always just one thing we can do. There are many things we can do, but we have to recognize that we are first and foremost responsible for our own well-being and have to take the first step. And when we start to do that, we can find more support in our environment for that kind of self-care and self-healing.
I'd like to ask the panelists, because this is something I see a lot in the hospital, is that we have had issues with access to care for mental wellness, specifically. Long wait times, difficulty getting people into appointments because of lack of insurance, difficulty with folks from low-income households who may not have internet or working phones to be able to engage. And when we start getting to the point where it's a self-love issue, I think it's important to say at that point, you need professional help, and that's okay. I'm sure most of us on this panel, if not all of us, have utilized that at one point or another. I know I have. And so I do think it's important for folks to talk about, how are ways that you can get that professional help in a pandemic, especially if you already have barriers from those social determinants of health and from those different issues that would prevent you from being able to access the type of incredible care all of you provide here.
I think that's incredibly important. And was actually my next point, Dr. Maddie. So thank you for that. And I'm looking specifically at Gwen and also Deanna and Marian to kind of weigh in on those points.
Yeah, I can say it's a very good point. And unfortunately, there is no solution that is a quick, easy one. The mental health system, I think, in St. Louis is overwhelmed right now. Most therapists I know are not accepting new clients. They're waiting lists. There's too much of a need, and there aren't as many people able to provide the care that is needed. I've been looking at some ways that we could maybe offer something like group therapy. That way people could get more people in a room. Even if it's a Zoom room, we could get more people provided services at one time. But again, that is not ideal. And I don't know a solution for this. I get calls every day from people wanting therapy, and I go through my litany of folks to try to find them good matches. But unfortunately, there's just not a lot out there. And I don't think St. Louis is unique in this manner. It's across the country, probably across the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I know for us at Revision, we are currently seeing most of the clinicians in our office are seeing people in person. At this point, we still do social distancing, masks, so we keep safety precautions. And I know for myself personally that I needed to come in because my kiddos were all really, really struggling. And so I am in office now. And we at Revision offer really low, we have a sliding scale. So we try to meet people in their financial ability and stability. And I also know Covenant Seminary and other schools around the area who have big counseling programs do have internships available that can offer free counseling through internships. So I know here at Revision and at Covenant Seminary, that might be a good places to start as well. So
I'm so interested in yoga. So I am not that flexible, and so I struggled with it until I really began to understand its purpose. And for me, it's interesting that as we're talking about mental health, that yoga has really helped center my mind. So I'm curious to hear about those of you who are really closely working with yoga and other forms of meditation. How does that also help center? If we can't get to a therapist, if we can't, I do know that there are some online therapy sessions that are happening. I've been seeing it on my feed on Facebook. I think Taraji P. Henson has started one. There's a couple of other celebrities who are advocates and really encouraging people to seek help, even virtually. But for me personally, I have found that meditation has really helped steady and center my mind and my thoughts. I'm curious for those of you who work in that, just want to hear your thoughts.
Well, whenever we practice yoga or whenever I teach yoga or meditation, I teach it as an embodiment practice. So when you're practicing embodiment, you're moving your body and you're breathing and you're conscious and you're aware. And we're moving energy in the body. So unprocessed thoughts, unprocessed emotions and feelings that get stuck in our systems, in our tissues, will get moved out and released. And so it's just like, if you kind of compare it to doing talk therapy, where they're using a top-down approach, where they're using conversation and cues and things like that to get you to work through your unprocessed, unconscious mind. We're using somatic techniques. And so it's like a bottom-up approach. We're working from the body into the mind, and they're working from the mind around. So it is very much like in any physical practice, really. It doesn't have to be yoga. It can be working out or anything like that. Anywhere where you're consciously moving your body and being just mindfully aware as you're doing it is moving energy. And that's why it works so well.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a minute about meditation if I could, because I think you bring up an excellent point. If we can't all get to therapists, what do we do in the midst of stress and pandemic? And meditation is such a fantastic, in addition to the somatic and yoga practices and everything else, meditation works with, it's allowing our mind to notice our mind, which is an interesting statement. But usually, most of the times we think that our mind is us, but that's not really the case. Our mind is a component of us, one aspect, we could say. And so in meditation, we get to experience the difference between the part of me that gets triggered or maybe hijacked by stress or fear or worry, or the kid's not at school yet, or whatever it is. I can get hijacked by that. And then meditation allows us to recognize from over here, this part of my mind is noticing this part of my mind. So we don't get pulled down. We don't get drug into this rabbit hole, because we can notice there's a separation, there's a gap there. And of course, like everything, this takes practice, right? We don't go to the gym and get biceps in 1 week. And like in meditation, we don't sit down on the cushion and get a focused mind that can recognize this. But over the course of practice, we get better and better at being able to recognize our mind and steer it in the right direction, or say, wait a minute, I notice I'm getting really frightened. Is it true that this thing I'm afraid of is going to happen? Maybe it's my own nervous system having hijacked me, and it's not even a thing. I can just come back and focus on my breathing. So it's it's been around for thousands of years because it works. And, as we can learn how to do that, we can work with our own minds, even if we can't get in front of a therapist, for example.
That's good. Our ancestors gave us all that we need if we just pay attention.
Yeah. There are a lot of forms.
One distinction I would like to highlight about the transcendental meditation technique is it is fundamentally a different kind of procedure from what Gwen highlighted. And although people should choose what attracts them most, one of the great things about the TM technique is its simplicity. It does not involve any need to clear the mind of thought or to attain a state of stillness, because the transcending or going beyond process from active busy mind to quiet mind is so automatic in TM, so natural. No one needs to have a particular ability to attain that state. It doesn't require faith or belief or meditative skill. In the TM technique, it occurs automatically that the mind settles quietly and the body rests deeply and gets rid of stress. And this is something that attracts many practitioners because they don't think of themselves as the meditative type of individual. And in fact, again, I'm not trying to compete here. It's just a different kind of meditation. But one of the things about TM is that you are an expert when you begin, because the mind has the ability to settle to quiet levels if it receives the proper guidance and technique. And people should definitely choose what appeals most to them, and different techniques will appeal to different people. But that's one of the distinguishing features of the Transcendental Meditation Technique. People can go to our website, tm.org/Brentwood, and see a short introductory video that will give them a fuller introduction than this forum permits tonight. I don't want to start lecturing anybody else.
And I would like to jump in and give meditation 101 and basics, but see, that's not my main focus. Like, that's where I can understand why I was invited to this conversation. I like to blend the worlds of meditation, fitness, the mental, mind, body, and spirit. And what the doctor just said is there's no specific mastery you need, and this is what I say: like, journal daily, meditation in some form. If it's prayer, if you got to get in a formality on your knees, but having a consistency, or a room or a place that's designated in your home for that, especially with us being in a quarantine. But that also magical effect, I like to call it alchemy, of being able to call forth whatever you want, and realizing that power is within you, and you don't need a mastery of anything. You just need to discover yourself. And that starts with journaling, self-reflection, looking in the mirror, and realizing you are your own worst enemy. No one's stopping you, just you. And the boogeyman is not real. You are the boogeyman.
Get out of your own way.
That's it. That's my saying.
And I'll be honest, like, if somebody's like really like against meditation and all of that, And if you get angry when somebody tells you to just breathe, you can do any type of like activity as a meditation. Like as long as you are like, if you're cooking, like you're consciously aware of what you're doing, you're putting the ingredients together, like that can be a meditation. Like it does not have to be very hard. And and there's some points in our life where we are going to be so upset to the point where somebody tells you to breathe and somebody tells you to sit down and meditate, and you're going to be like, I want to smack you in the face. Like, no, like I can't handle that right now. And we have to find other means in that case. And like you said, journaling is a great alternative. It just gets all of those thoughts on paper, but finding your version of a meditation.
Mm-hmm. I think the buy-in is what's hard for a lot of my clients, where they're like, okay, so I don't get it. I'm supposed to sit here and not think about anything. How does this work? And so I do exactly what you were just saying. I make it real for them. And so I talk about basically mindfulness meditation, but in the moment where you're actively doing something. And so when you're driving to work, do you think about getting to work, or do you think about what you're doing on that drive? Do you think about that you sipping that coffee? Do you think about stopping at that stop sign? Or are you thinking about what you're about to do at work, those emails you need to respond to? And then all of a sudden you pull up in your parking space and you're at work, but you have no clue how you actually got there, right? And so I asked them to start with that. I want you to start with being mindful of that drive, be in the moment. And so stop skipping the moment and going ahead to where you're going to be in about 15 minutes, and actually be in that moment. And then they start with that and they're like, oh, you know what? I realized a lot of things that were going on. So I think the buy-in part is the biggest thing, and then making it real for them instead of trying to put them right into one of the meditation examples that, that are out there. And then once they can apply it to their daily lives, then it's easier for them to be able to do it.
And one way I do this with families is I'm like, how often do you eat food and you're around the dinner table and all of a sudden you're done? And like, so I ask my clients to do mindfulness eating. I'm like, sit there and as a family, discuss what you're eating. Discuss how it tastes. Is it savory? Is it sweet? And that's where a lot of my clients have buy-in. They're like, oh, we can do this with food? And I'm like, yes, you can do it with food. And they're like, oh, we can do that.
That's good. That is very helpful. And those moments of discussion, that's another opportunity of generosity, but also reflection. Bringing everybody together at that table in the evening is something that we've been doing more in my house than we probably have ever done, which I'm thankful for. But it is truly a moment where, it's kind of a cliche, but it's like, well, how has your day been? Because to be honest, there is even still isolation in community, especially now that we all have designated workspaces. So if I'm in this space and somebody else is in this space and my daughter is in this space and my son is at this space, we could go all day and not see each other. So really that opportunity to come back together and say, what happened in class today? What happened in your world today? Is a minute to breathe and to center oneself and to connect again. Thank you for that. Y'all are amazing. This is therapy. I'm going to ask our producers to just roll really quickly a couple things. You all have shared so many resources with us this evening. And if there's anything else that you can think of, I would love for you to say it out loud. But we just want to share with our viewers, again, what your names are and your affiliations, the organizations, the companies, the spaces that you are in. If anyone is looking for therapy, if anyone is looking for yoga or meditation, if they're looking for somebody to just reach out to, we just really want to make sure that our viewers have an opportunity to connect with you all. So I'll start with Christian Varner, who again is a recent transplant. Christian, is there anything that you would like to add so that folks know how to reach you?
Sure. My name is Christian Varner, like my wife just said. My website is hhtfitnesscenter.com. On social media, we have a really large following, awesome classes. It's on Instagram at hhtfitness, Facebook, HHT Fitness, Twitter, HHT Fitness, and the same from our other company, which is Organic Juices and Herbs for people who are into medicinal options. And that would be BAM Juice, BAM Juice on Instagram, Facebook, and I could be reached through either.
Thank you. Also, any handles that you guys want to, I know handles, that is a millennial term, but if there is your Facebook, your Instagram, your Twitter, however folks can reach you, Gwen, let us know.
Did you say Gwen?
Yes.
Nope. Thank you. So I will go through the list for the St. Louis Wellness Center. You can find us. And also I point out, I am one person there, but we have an entire group of people: chiropractors, massage therapists, breath workers, cranial sacral. We have an entire yoga studio, a meditation hall, personal fitness gym. We have a number of things. So if any of these are interesting to you, please reach out to us. You can find us on Facebook at STLWC. Instagram is St. Louis Wellness Center, and it's ST Wellness Center. Our website is stlouiswellnesscenter.com. You can reach us St. Louis Wellness Center at Gmail. And if you want my personal email, I am at drgwen@hotmail.
Dr. Gwen giving the personal email. Oh my.
That is true.
Direct access. Thank you, Doctor. That's Dr. Gwen. John, let us know how we can reach you.
Our TM Center website can be found at tm.org/Brentwood. And if you scroll down just a little bit on the left side of the page, you will see a calendar where we have upcoming TM talks listed. And you'll also see a link just above the calendar where you can click over to a short 18-minute video introduction to the TM technique. It's on a separate web page, but the link for it is right there at the top of our home page. And people can also find our center phone number there. And my email isjallen, ALLON, @tm.org. I'm happy to field any kind of inquiry or questions at that address.
Thank you, John. Kelley?
Hi. So if I missed before, my name's Kelley. I'm the owner of Offbeat Yoga, and that's in Chesterfield, Missouri. We have the studio, which holds 8 people. We have 7 other teachers that work with us, teaching classes there. But if you want to find us online and take a virtual class, our whole studio is completely virtual too. We have specialty like workshops on there, and a bunch of other fun classes and some freebies on our website. And if you want to reach out to us over social media, it's Facebook at OBSTL, OB Yoga STL. And they don't let you put F and B together in Facebook for some reason. So it's OB Yoga STL. And then in Instagram, it's offbeat.yoga. We also have a YouTube channel if you want to watch any YouTube videos at offbeat.yoga.
Thank you, Kelley. Deanna?
Hi. So at But First You, we offer therapy, and we also offer hip-hop music spin classes. So yes, I can be your therapist and your spin instructor. One-stop shop. And so check us out. You can check out our website at butfirstyoullc.org. And my handles are all But First You at But First You LLC. As well. We have 6 riders at a time, so the classes are small, social distance as well. And just check us out, whether you want to ride with us or you would like for me to be your therapist.
Thank you, Deanna. And Dr. Mati?
I'm a little different than everyone else, but I am definitely available for all infectious diseases or COVID-related questions. I can be found on Twitter at, it's right there. On the left is the Twitter handle. On the right is IG. I do a lot of education around COVID. And like I said, a focus on marginalized populations. but I'm around, and both my profiles have links to a form you can fill in if you're interested in having me come speak or help with an event, and you can fill that out for availability.
Thank you. And Marian, how can we reach you?
So if you want to, first a little bit about revision. I'm one of 13 therapists in our practice. We do a wide range of different therapies, from DBT, couples counseling, family counseling. We have one therapist that specifically specializes in spiritual abuse recovery. We have another therapist that is very specialized in narcissistic abuse recovery. So we just have a wide range of different amazing therapists. I honestly cannot say enough about revision and just how wonderful it is. And so if you want to reach us, we are at revisionchristiancounseling.com. You can also find us on Facebook, search for Revision Christian Counseling. And if you want to reach me personally, it's Marian at revisionchristiancounseling.com.
Thank you so much, Marian. Thank you, everybody. We're going to open up the questions now to come from the chat. We are streaming live via Facebook and our YouTube channel. And so we encourage all of our viewers to go ahead and raise the question. These panelists have been so generous with all of themselves. They brought their fullness today, and we are so appreciative. And while we're waiting for some questions to come through, we also want to encourage viewers to support the Rep. We're really, really grateful that we're able to bring so much of our virtual programming to you all in this way. And if you'd like to support the Rep, feel free to do so. We appreciate your giving. And you can text the Rep at REPSTL, and you text that number 44321. So again, it is the number 44321 and REPSTL. If anyone is able to give or to make a donation, we certainly would appreciate it so we can continue to do the work that we are doing. One of the questions that we talked about earlier this week is, and we actually kind of talked about it even in our space today, was Zoom fatigue. It is real. What would you all suggest? Dr. Mati, she said, well, let's have a WebEx, just changing up the platform. And I think that is true. I had a WebEx not too long ago, and so I think she's quite right. But Zoom fatigue is real. There are very real challenges. My eyes are not that great. I've learned to wear my glasses now in a space where I normally did not have to. What do y'all suggest just to keep us from being worn out on the computers all day?
This is a very practical thing for your eyes, Adina. But like going up and then to the side, down, side, and then imagine you're going from 2 o'clock down to like 8 o'clock. And like draw those like half circles and then do like a full circle with your eye.
I'm doing it.
It feels really good.
I am doing it.
We're probably all freaking out the viewers right now because we're all doing it at the same time.
Right.
All they're seeing is like.
That's the truth. We are receiving some feedback from the chat. I just want to amplify this comment. Just being present to this discussion was a gift. It has been my Friday night meditation. Thank you for providing this. And I believe it is true. It resonates with me. It has been meditation. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Thank you so much. Any other questions, even from the panel? Any other things that you all are curious about? Well, you all have been amazing. It has really, really been a joy to be in conversation with you all. We're going to flash one more time. We're going to flash everybody's handles and websites and email addresses, just so the viewers really get a chance to see it, to jot it down, and to be able to make sure they are able to make the connections that they feel are necessary for their own wellness and their own health. So our producers, once again, will go ahead and scroll everybody's information.
Deanna, I would like to add my own personal thanks to you for providing this forum for the community. I think everyone appreciates here what a great gift it is that you're giving to St. Louis. And I'd like to recognize you and your entire team backstage, as it were, for doing this for the community. It's a gift, and it's St. Louis's treasure to have you and the rep providing this service.
We thank you. We thank you, John. We thank you so much. You all have been so dynamic and amazing. It's food for the soul today. It has been food for our soul. Thank you to our producing team. Thank you to all of our viewers. Thank you to all of our panelists. We will be with you all again in the spring months. We'll be bringing another episode of Represent STL. This is just our second episode. So one of the blessings in the challenge of the pandemic is that we are able to think very differently, very creatively of how we are being a resource and how we're serving. And so this is one of those opportunities to serve innovatively, creatively, and continue to be in community with all of you. So thank you again. We look forward to our next time that we get to all come together again, and we'll see everybody very soon. Take care.
Thank you, Deanna.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.